No, I think this concept of figure in the ground is a good format for talking about the AI.
Okay. The Gestalt idea, okay, figure and ground is a Gestalt. It comes from the Gestalt psychology people who were active. Actually, Figure Ground, there was, I think, a 2-volume big fat book by Niels Bohr's good friend. I always forget his name. He's the guy who came up with that picture of, it looks like it could be a goblet or two faces.
Mm-hmm.
But he wrote the book, this huge tome about figure and ground relationships, figure and ground reversals, that kind of thing. But the other concept they have is closure.
Mm-hmm.
That every perception is a closure. So there's a central part, the central object that is defined in the act of closure, but it expresses the whole environment, the whole context.
How does it express the whole?
Well, because it needs a context in order to have a meaning.
Yes. So it can't be everything.
Well, it is everything. In a couple of ways.
If there is a closure and the context, you know, everything cannot have a context.
Well, anything that can be known has the shape, which is the same shape, which is the shape of a closure. Anything that can be known has the shape of a closure. And so if we're going to know everything, then we have to pick up everything, one thing at a time, you know, and dignify it as a thing in this act of severing it from its environment, you know, making it the thing that stands out, the focal.
Right, so it can never be everything.
Everything is always what it isn't. Except for, of course, that thing. Well, in artificial intelligence, they talk about a couple of things. One classic problem is called the frame problem. Another classic problem is called the symbol grounding problem. In order to know what anything is, you have to know what everything is. And so it's the monster version of the chicken and the egg, which came first. You know, it's an insoluble problem. But it isn't. It's another classic way of phrasing it is you talk about the hermeneutic circle.
What is it?
Well, one of my favorite examples has been these psychological experiments. You isolate part of a visual field. It's a particular color, but as soon as you isolate it, it isn't a particular color. It is only given the color that it is by the colors around it.
Yes.
By the background.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take the same, exactly the same physical, you can get your light meters and you can sample it and you can get the spectrum and you can find the luminance profile is exactly this, and you can take exactly the same thing, put it in a different context and have it read as a completely different color. It can go to green to orange,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good example.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And then logic has a real problem with that, because logic doesn't like circles. It's called the vicious circle principle, but it is the hermeneutic circle that gives meaning to anything, is everything. So that we can take this color patch in the field, the visual field, and we can say, well, it depends for the color that we interpret it as on the color patches around it, and then we look at each of those color patches, and we have to do the same procedure with those, and we eventually discover we can't know what any color is, and that color cannot exist, except that, of course, it does.
Yes.
And that's a synecdoche of our embeddedness in an environment. We get our meaning from our environment, but we don't know it. We just think that we're a color patch. Oh yeah, I'm red. We don't realize that, no. You are the whole thing, right? It takes the whole thing for there to be anything. So how do you get started? And Google is a good example here, because they did nothing fancier than create an index of everything. Any text, you know. So Tim Berners-Lee creates this frame in which text can appear magically. It's an open invitation. Anybody can now be a publisher. So whatever you want, go ahead, do it.
Yeah.
And it catches on for some weird, inexplicable sociological reason. And then Google comes along, half a decade later or so, and creates one of any number of search engines, but theirs is distinguished by being a little simpler. You know, it's got this appealing look to it. It's not jazzing it up. And so it survives, and the others fall by the wayside. So its success enables it to become more successful, and it loops on that loop for a while, until it has created in itself an artificial intelligence that swallowed the whole planet. And I think the people who in charge of Google kind of recognize what they have there. You know, at some point it dawned on them, oh, this is actually that AI that they were talking about. In fact, we've already done it. So all this talk now about artificial intelligence, it is a little bit beside the point. Because the AI the size of the planet, that swallowed the whole planet, it's already there. You know? We woke up inside it and didn't even realize it. So we are it. It's like that old Pogo comic strip. We have met the enemy, and it is us. Yeah. So I think it can be really helpful. At the same time that artificial intelligence was getting defined, AI gets defined. I think it was Ross Ashby came up with something. Well, he was much more interested in IA, which is intelligence amplification. Let's take the existing intelligence that we know about, i.e. us, and we can use a body of, computer techniques and this and that and the other thing, and enhance our own intelligence. So now they're talking about actually, brain implants, and so in fact Elon Musk, he's just vowed to put hundreds of millions of dollars into neural prostheses and that kind of thing.
Yes.
To because seeing that this is the direction where AI and IA will having bifurcated back in around 1956, they can sort of come back together. Because the computers get small enough and they get cheap enough. I mean, we have video cameras now. How many cell phones are there in the world? How many billions of cell phones are there? Well, that's how many video cameras there
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
You could wallpaper the whole joint, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The million eyes of Dr. Mabuse, you know? It's absurd, but there it is. This universal surveillance, anyway, there's this great line from Freud. I'm kind of nattering on now, I think it's... But he had this great line that we are the prosthetic gods,
Mm-hmm.
which has, you know, this kind of conflicting moral sense to it. Like, okay, we can make ourselves into gods by bolting on, you know, artificial devices and prostheses and so on. But it also means that we're crippled.
Oh, how so?
Well, we're crippled by these crutches, you know, these
Mm-hmm.
extensions.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you attach, you know, it's like Stellark and his third arm, right?
Yeah.
If he allows himself to get dependent on his third arm, then he's crippled. He's just disabled himself by the
Why?
apparent enhancement to himself disables him.
From what?
From not being dependent upon this appendage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But was he not dependent, then he wouldn't be able to...
Yeah, he wouldn't be able to demo his third arm. Again, it's the chicken and the egg. Yeah. Yeah. I pulled a book off the shelf there about, I don't know, I'm going to look at this. It's this guy, Edward T. Hall, Beyond Culture. And it dates back away, 1976, okay. I don't know. What's it say? Can I read you just this bit?
Yeah.
The bowerbird of New Guinea gets its name from the practice of building a bower of twigs and grass to attract a mate. The bower is decorated with shells, shiny skeletons of insects, freshly picked flowers, seeds, pebbles, and other brightly colored objects. The bower is an extension of the male's brilliant plumage. It's sort of substituted for what in other species, related species, would be like a showy plumage and a display and that, but it gets invested in this extension. Art. Like the bowerbird, man has evolved extensions of himself, such as language, tools, institutions. In the process, we get caught in a web of extension transference where the extension takes the place of a human process. We end up repressing our nature, denying our talents, punishing ourselves for imagined failures. The extensions develop lives of their own, which threaten to turn the joyous process of life into a shadow world. Yeah, it sounds good, actually. I love this guy. He was an anthropologist, and he was a friend of McLuhan and of the other anthropologist, Ted Carpenter. The guy lived with the Navajo down in Arizona. And had spent years living in Japan, and he's the guy that drew attention to these hidden environments that define cultures. He wrote a book called The Hidden Dimension, which is about space. Different cultures, different human cultures have different attitudes about what distance is comfortable and what makes you feel. You know, I remember reading about if I think maybe even Tom was telling me, go to a little restaurant, a little cafe or something in Pakistan or India. You sit down, the place is empty, you sit down by yourself at a little table. Somebody comes in, they sit right next to you.
Yeah.
Completely freak out the white folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So he just started, just by paying attention to it, kind of mapping it out, like this is actually a very important thing. Yeah. And then he did that to other aspects of our environment that we don't generally think about as our environments. Yeah. He wrote a book about time perception in the same way. So space perception, time perception, but these are social categories.
Yes.
But because they're our environment that we're raised in, we think it's completely natural. We don't even question. We don't even know it's there. Yeah, it's invisible. Yeah. So that's fascinating. I don't know what this has to do with artificial intelligence.
I don't know where I started.
Well,
yeah, the figure in the ground. Like what is there a figure in the ground in artificial intelligence? And then you talked about Google. So the ground would be the everything that Google knows.
yeah.
That's the ground. And then
The figure is anybody's particular question.
yes, but then this process from getting to the question, anybody's question, it's from the ground.
It is from the ground, but then it also, in its own minuscule way, each query gets folded back into the ground. And this is this learning process or training process. Every query gives feedback
Yes.
to this inconceivably vast index that is Google.
Well, is there any better or more advanced artificial intelligence other than Google?
Well, I described earlier this project late in the career of Zelig Harris. The science sublanguage basically created an artificial intelligence that was capable of reading and understanding in the sense of being able to answer questions sensibly in a natural language, but using a restricted vocabulary given to it by the field of expertise of this enzymology subculture. What he called a science sublanguage. So within that domain you can have quote unquote a genuine artificial intelligence. But this was created back in 1980 something. Nobody knows about it. I know about it only because I haunt library stacks. The field of artificial intelligence has never heard of this. So their program has already been satisfied. The problem is solved long ago. They didn't notice. You try to draw it to their attention now, they won't pay attention. It's always built out of irony. There's just layers of irony in the whole thing. And any time I start really thinking about it like this, it just, for me, it always comes back to like, well, can't we treat people more kindly? Can't we do that? And I think it really comes, like this morning's question about Polanyi, and you have these two brothers, and although they didn't actually talk to each other, and they sort of represented, that they felt they were like antithetical. But they were both concerned with things that do come together in this issue right now of this artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can we articulate human expertise? Or a human-like expertise? Hopefully, I mean, like the idea is it's somehow going to improve things. But it is, in actual terms, it's in the service of an economic juggernaut, a system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these days in the political sphere, like the reason anything happens is because of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the economy did it. And it's the ideology is that it's autonomous, that it just does what it will. Right? And we're along for the ride. And it brings the business cycle with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it brings wars with it and revolutions and, you know. But somehow it's the right thing, that we should just trust this insane, out of control express train hurtling. Nobody knows where it's going. No, we can see doom on every side, you know. We're just hanging on by the skin of our teeth, you know. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, rather than machine consciousness, we should really ask, is it possible for humans to become conscious? You know, is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
Can we collectively become conscious? Because I think that's the real question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you said it already. For you, it's all about, can we be more kind to each other?
Right.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's like we could well, there's this trope about God that, you know, not a sparrow falls, but that God is not there witnessing it, you know, actually participating in it. Why not, you know, like nothing will pass the unceasing vigilance of God, right? You're just laughing like a fool. Yeah, but it's like that. But, you know, the idea is that everybody, many people are very paranoid about the surveillance state. You know, the NSA, the No Such Agency, is listening to every telephone call in the entire planet, listening in on, you know, looking through every camera, you know. It is like that old sort of crappy movie. Who was it? Fritz Lang made this film called The Thousand Eyes of Dr. Mabuse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this guy has this hotel and he spies on people, and it's like, oh, that's creepy, right? But you have this American government organization that spies on everybody.
Yeah.
And it's got an unlimited budget. Nobody knows how big that budget is. It's crazy.
Yeah, so.
And why is it doing it? Nobody knows. It's always been this way, right? It's what we do.
Yeah.
So, but the flip side of that is that, you know, it is this synthetic God or this prosthetic God. That's the other interpretation of Freud's little phrase, is that we build an artificial God as a prosthesis for ourselves, for our own, to help look after us. Yeah, the breakthrough is always, there's this great term from the Christian tradition, Metanoia. It just means, it's got the old Greek is metanoia, which kind of like sounds like paranoia,
Yeah.
but different, right?
But what is it? I don't know.
It means repentance, but the literal meaning is to turn around on your path. So if you were going that way, it's like this sudden moment of illumination when you see, oh, and then you turn around and you go the other way, right? So if we were on that trajectory,
Yes.
to create the hell planet, the prison planet,
Yeah.
turn the whole thing, like make Mordor great again, then there's that illumination and it goes flip, and suddenly you realize, we're making paradise, or this is paradise, or, if we have the right attitude, this is already paradise and we don't need to be worried. We don't need to be terrified of ourselves.
What would you say? But isn't Buddhism answer to that? Why do we need anything artificial?
Well, the only thing wrong with Buddhism is the Buddhists.
How so?
If you got rid of the Buddhists, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but tell me, what do you mean?
No. I think we're doing fine. When I can really think about it, I think we're doing fine. And this blind, insensate economic motive, this motor, this engine, it has, within the space of a few decades, delivered the little hand communicator, magic. Here's this little remote outpost of the global brain. It's in my hand, and it connects. It's.
What is it? What are you talking about?
Well, that little device, the little smartphone, the smartphone.
Yes.
It's a video
Yeah.
camera and.
Yeah. Why do you need that?
Well, I don't know that anybody needs it. I mean, the Aborigines in Australia have been living one continuous culture for like 40, 50, 70,000 years, whatever, So, and just a lot that people don't need. But, I don't know, we're into a science fiction universe, so.
When you say DNA code
For life.
for life,
Yeah.
yes. Well, life is.
Well, when we can roll up our sleeves and start mucking around with our own desires and our own happiness, if we can program happiness directly somehow, which seems like a weird one because we habituate to things.
Yeah.
But then adaptation. Imagining we had little nano prostheses right integrated with the nervous system, flowing around the circulatory system, able to go everywhere in our bodies, making sure that we're free of cancers and da 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 da, and essentially, allowing us to live for extended life spans, but also able to keep us happy.
Yeah.
and not in the way of the culture of addiction,
Yes.
but in the way of a culture of health and I mean, if we weren't unhappy, uptight, paranoid, freaked out, if we were, like bliss is actually pretty good, right?
Yes.
Buddhism as well, they're sort of into bliss. Does it take 20 years to get to bliss? Probably not. Yeah.
To me, it's that is blissful.
The 20 years.
No, the path. If somebody gave me a pill that would make me just happy forever, I don't think I would want it.
Right.
Yeah, it's stupid to be unhappy, but it's also stupid to be happy as its opposite.
And I think most people would agree with you.
Oh, I don't think so, actually.
I think if people had a chance to think about it.
Oh, people wouldn't think about it.
No, people don't think about this. I mean, it's certainly as valuable to think about happiness as it is to think about death,
So what?
Or unhappiness, if you will. You can think about unhappiness, dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. Or you can think about happiness. Either one works, right?
Right. But
Because
what is it then, in the context of what we're talking about?
Well, because
what is it
of
about
this,
happiness that gives it value?
Well,
if you don't look at it as opposed to unhappiness, you're just given a pill. You're born that way. You're happy. What is its value?
Well, this was the question posed in The Matrix, the film, right?
Yes.
The guy can be woken up, or he can go back to sleep. You can be happy
Yes, exactly.
with the imaginary steak, but you're really living in a pod.
Yeah, does it matter? Yes. Well, that's the question. That's exactly the question. That's what I mean when I say, well, to me it is the path itself.
Right. But you want to know that it is a path. That is part of the satisfaction, part of the knowing, part of the reward, part of
I want to be a witness to the realization of happiness. The happiness for me is in the actual realization of it. In which case because you're a participant, only you can bring that together.
Well, this is very reminiscent of Christian theology about free will. It really is.
But tell me.
I can't. I'm sorry, you've just articulated all this stuff that powerfully reminded me of things I'd recently been reading about theology in regards free will. God could have made us happy.
Yes.
Instead, Christian dogma is that we're handed original sin and free will.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So I like that.
Yes, exactly. You're a good Christian.
That's horrible.
Yeah, I know.
But I'm just trying to imagine the situation of being handed happiness and not knowing why, and I just can't imagine.
Few people have been taken this on, and one man who has is he's a transhumanist based in England. He has this massive website called Headweb, or it's got many angles and cubby holes and cul-de-sac and so on, but it's about happy. He's taken on this hedonic imperative. It's his position that if we address happiness first at a biochemical level,
Yes.
then all the other problems that we seem to be so beset by will just dissolve.
Uh-huh.
So this is something that was proposed by Arthur Koestler as well, and Aldous Huxley, I suppose, although in an ironic kind of way. You know, soma, that little pill will make you happy.
Yeah.
But then later in life, he's the great enthusiast about psychedelics.
Yeah.
Koestler did psychedelics once, didn't like them at all. Yeah. But even at the end of his days, he was saying this is the way to solve our problems, is to take it on biochemically.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are, we have these massive atlases of neuroscience now, and we're building the massive atlases of our own molecular biology. And we have combinatory chemistry and rational drug design, and all these things are cooking in the laboratories.
Yeah.
We have something I just discovered in the last couple of weeks, just astonished me, was that in the United States now, all over the United States, there are clinics that people can go to for treatment of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, that administer ketamine, which is a dissociative, anesthetic, deliriant, delusionogen,
Mm-hmm.
which kids used to do 10 and 20 years ago at raves to get really screamingly high out of their minds.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Now this is, just in the past couple of years, you know, appeared like magic, you know, in shopping malls, you know,
Yeah.
all over the United States. It's like, fuck,
So-
where did that come from?
Okay, so why didn't what would be your reason to not go for it? Or to put the entire planet on it?
No, I have this sense, and this is something William Burroughs at the end of his life came up. You know, he came to the same conclusion that Sigmund Freud came to at the end of his life,
Yeah.
which was that our highest happiness is to serve other people.
Mm-hmm.
And we all get to throw ourselves on the bayonets. We all get to sacrifice ourselves
Mm-hmm.
for other people.
Mhm.
It's what gives our lives purpose.
Yes.
So to deny people that by making them happy would kind of be well, if I think about it, if you know, we're having this discussion and
Yes.
and it makes me think about it, and I
Yeah.
have to conclude, well, first, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it may be that David Pierce is right with his hedonic
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
You know, Pierce and Huxley and
Mhm.
Koestler. But it may be that this is paradise already, and that we're actually already engaged in doing exactly what we're here to do. You know, and we're fulfilling that just by becoming aware that, you know, if we're suffering, yes, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's for, you know, it's universal. I'm suffering for everyone. and this is maybe, I mean, I am kind of coming on a bit Christian here, but it's like if I were to sum up what McLuhan was about, or what he had this big turnaround moment. he had made this pact with God. Like, he didn't believe in God, and he didn't believe in religion, he didn't believe in any of that. But there was enough of it in his immediate environment. This is in the 1930s in England, and there were some rather celebrated converts to Catholicism, people that he really admired, and so on. And he was trying to figure out, like, I think, you know, he really thought G.K. Chesterton was wonderful, but how can this wonderful person believe this crock of baloney? Like, you know, he was raised a Christian, and they're all fools. His brother was a minister, you know, and he's a fool.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So he says, okay, God, I'm going to be here. I'll turn up every day and check in to see if you're, you know, if you have anything to tell me or anything to show me, you know. And this went on for 2 or 3 years, and one morning, you know, there he is, shows up, and God showed him. And that changed his life. He went out the next day and became a Catholic, and da-da-da-da-da. But what he was shown was that ordinary perception is the incarnation, the whole thing. So just by existing, by being enfleshed,
Yes.
we are the crucifixion. We are the whole story. You know, we're Adam and Eve and the whole spiel, right up to the Book of Revelations, you know. And then,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
the whole enchilada. Right.